Welcome to PogChamps 3 Day 2, a day which featured an epic matchup between xQc and Rubius, or Ruben Doblas Gunderson, one of the largest Spanish-speaking YouTubers in the world, and by far the largest Spanish-speaking Twitch streamer in the world. Now, the reason why this entire video will be dedicated to these two, and then I will fill you in on the results, and also remember there is a link in the description to all PogChamps results, is that this clash was fantastic since the two of them have the copias, the copy kind of joke about them, that Rubius is kind of the Spanish-speaking xQc with the hair and everything and the kind of the personality, but their games, oh, their games were great. Let's get into them. xQc began with e4. Rubius responded with d5, and upon pawn capture, knight to f6. This on its own is known as the Scandinavian defense. Black allows the queen to come out early, be targeted, and either go all the way back, go to d6, or queen a5. This has been played by many grandmasters, but Rubius is beyond the level of grandmaster and plays the move knight to f6. This is known as the Portuguese gambit, or a couple of different ways of calling it, and black wants to take back on d5 like this. If a player wants to hang on to the pawn with the pawn, it can get very dangerous because black can play c6, giving up a second pawn for initiative. So, xQc plays this, but Rubius plays bishop g4. He continues to develop. And now xQc plays knight f3. The best and critical move here is to play something like pawn to f3, believe it or not, because what a move like this does is it makes it really difficult for black to move this bishop. And if you go here, actually the best thing to do is to chase. And when the bishop goes back, you can even kind of expand more and more in the center in some of these positions, trying to go h5 and trapping the bishop. But the way xQc played this, also beyond reasonable, more than reasonable. And knight takes d5, he takes. Now, if I ask you what are the next two moves here by white to get fully developed, castled, and everything is good to go, you best be answering bishop out and castle. Don't chase the queen. You need to stabilize. And often you need to kind of take care of this pin. xQc plays h3, and actually here, the best move for black is to take the knight. You say, why? I just take back with the queen and trade queens, or the pawn. Well, you've traded off the bishop, but you've damaged white's pawns beyond repair. White now has what are known as pawn islands. These are doubled isolated pawns, and black will finish development with knight out and castle. But Rubius went back, and xQc chased him away, and here played an extremely clutch move, d3, blocking this bishop's path, stopping anything from coming to e4, and developing this bishop out. Knight c6, bishop f4. Now, the golden rule about a bishop move like this in the middle, you gotta be really careful and make sure your opponent cannot attack your bishop, because if they can, then they win time, and you've helped them develop. So, it was probably better, again, for xQc to focus on getting his king out of the center, or to avoid getting struck. Now, bishop f4, Rubius castled, and now we get bishop g2, but now e5. And here, xQc did not go chasing the rook. During the game, he actually verbally said, well, if I just go here, black just goes here, and I've done nothing. I just have to return back. And he's right. You have to anticipate what your opponent is going to do. Just because you found a move that creates a one-move threat, this is hope chess. You're just hoping your opponent doesn't see this. So he goes back. Now, Rubius here has a big moment. He's gotten out of the opening phase. His preparation has paid off. What do you do now? That is what all of these recaps about PogChamps are going to be about. Crafting your thought process once you have left the opening, and hopefully even giving you some opening ideas to inspire. So, first of all, we got to think about a check always. We got to think about whether or not this check is good. Now, you might just say, well, he just goes here. Yes. And this bishop's got to go. Except for the fact that that move, what did it weaken? Every move might make something stronger, might make something weaker. This pawn is now being hit by 3 different pieces. Whereas now, it's defended by a pawn you don't have anything to worry about. Also, bishop e7 or bishop d6, just finishing your development. And this move, we don't want that because white just goes a3, and now we've got to go back. You'll notice that when you play the move knight b4, you're actually not improving your position. You're not creating a threat. You haven't created a threat, and you haven't gotten another piece out. So you want to try to finish all the development or find pawn trade opportunities that are advantageous for you. Now, here we get e4. So the knight is hit, and now this is hit. So let's follow the capture chain. If white were to take on b4, black were to take on f3, we would take and we would be defended and attacking the queen. Also, when this pawn came here, we opened up the a file and the king is there, so that's good for us. However, if pawn takes, bishop takes, check, well, now you can still continue with c3. Say, Levy, a minute ago you told me this was bad for white. Well, the difference is that we've gotten a knight. And if pawn takes f3, ladies and gentlemen, do you take the bishop or do you take the pawn? You take the pawn, because the bishop isn't going anywhere. If you were to take the bishop, they would take your bishop. But if you take the pawn, they're dealing with this and this. They cannot escape danger. If they take the pawn, you just take back and you're fine. You've got to visualize what is going to happen. And xQc could have taken this if he wanted to. It would have led to a weird opening of the lines. But he took the... he didn't take. He just pushed. And now Rubius did this, and even here, xQc should consider bishop takes f3, attacking the queen, and this, and now black would have had to find knight takes c2 check, and, well, the queen obviously can't take, but you are attacking their queen. It's a lot of craziness. Black is winning, but has to be accurate. But xQc took the knight and lost the bishop. Now he is just the bishop down. And then we got queen to e4. So Rubius, again, not seeing this. And this is open. Now xQc loses his c2 pawn, trades, and picks up the pawn on... Well, first he traded rooks, which does not have my blessing. You're up material, no need to trade. Just take. And look how quickly it can all fall apart. Let's say black goes, oh, I could take. I have a pin. Rook takes d4. White is now better, because rook a8... Here, take. And now you've got nothing covering this. If takes, then takes, and there we go. So it's never too late to blunder, but Felix goes for a rook trade and then plays this. Now we get this, and oh, whoa. Couldn't tell if this was a mouse slip or he just played too quickly. At this point, Rubius has about 2 minutes, xQc has about a minute. So bishop to f5, he takes. Now the whole evaluation's changed. It's time to adapt to the new position. A pawn's moved, the rook's lines are open, but we get b6. Rubius is the second mistake that turns out to start draining his position. Bishop back to f8. Rook takes h7, of course taking f7 mildly more accurate because it's a check, but rook h7 is a great move. Now we get c5. Bam, 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 king goes back. Now here, xQc does not move his rook, but he doesn't make a blunder. What? What kind of sorcery riddle is GothamChess spinning upon us? Bishop g5. Equal or exceeding danger. If you take my rook, I take yours, and I'm up a lot of material. We are now in the endgame. So on this move, when the bishop attacks the rook, xQc saw rook g6, defending the bishop. Now, normally that's a great move, except there's a better one. And the crazy thing is he actually saw it, and then he didn't play it, pinning the bishop to the king. At this point in the game, you've got to learn about simplifying, and you can just take, and this is winning. You should be able to win 4 versus 1 pawn endgame. If you can't win this, it's time for checkers. So he plays rook g6, good. And now that he's up 3 pawns to 1 in the rook endgame, he gives a check and puts his rook behind the enemy pawn. I mean, I don't know where this guy saw endgame videos on YouTube, but he puts his rook behind the enemy pawn, and then Rubius plays rook h5. And the objective evaluation of this position is probably holdable for black, but xQc has a trick. He plays rook c6, and Rubius has to decide between going back and coming forward, and he goes the wrong way. And he goes the wrong way because rook takes pawn, and it's over. Had he gone back, let's say white plays like king e3, king d7, and now the rook has to abandon the post, and rook h3, and it's 2-on-1 and most likely a draw. An epic game, but xQc threw in a check, tricked Rubius into moving forward, and then watch the conversion. He doesn't even rely on the rook. He walks the king and pawn up. Even all pawns were gone, except this. This is a winning endgame. He promotes and then very carefully realizes there's no draw, no stalemate. brings the pieces in, and finishes the job. A big comeback win from xQc, who was struggling in the opening, but stabilized the position immediately after blundering. And for Rubius, the big learning point is rather than playing knight to b4, as he did on move 11, at this point, look for the pawn breaks, look to finish your development and swarm with checks first, or spots in the board you can open things up where you are going to be putting your opponent under serious attack. Rather than playing, you know, a move kind of abstractly infiltrating, a pawn break, an opportunity to open up the position, or fully finish your development, bishop and rook out, because this bishop took a long time to get into the game. So xQc now has a 1-0 lead, and we go to game number 2, okay? Rubius begins with e4, xQc plays the Petrov. It's like you're watching, you know, 2700 rated grandmasters. Takes d6, which is considered the main line, and now Rubius plays knight c. Are you kidding me? Knight c3 is one of the best moves. The point normally here is that GMs take like this, and then they'll play bishop, bishop, queen, and long castle. That is the meta, but these guys make their own meta. So Rubius takes with the b pawn, queen e7 check, bishop e2. Why is this not a good move? Because it hinders the natural development of black's position. You can't get your dark squared bishop out very easily. In fact, if you try to get your dark squared bishop out very easily, you very quickly lose the game to moves like bishop b5 check and rook e1. For example, if bishop b5 and you block, there can be sorts of tactics on the e line. I mean, in this particular case, there is bishop e6, and black will survive for some while longer, but this is not something that I want any of you to deal with ever. And frankly speaking, in many positions, white can just set this up, and the constant lingering threat of it existing is bad enough. So xQc decides, well, why don't I just castle long? I mean, I've already put my queen here, let me just finish my development this way. And that's exactly what he does. But now, this is already going to be a lesson in strategy. The sides have castled different ways. So, what do? If you're playing with white, what you want to do is immediately go for the B line. You either attack with your pawns, pawn storm to open things up, or you attack on the open lines. Now, Rubius plays a move developing his dark squared bishop. That last game, he didn't do that. But just the way xQc didn't play bishop g5 in the last game, why? Because you just get swatted away. And you want to avoid moves like that. It would have been better for Rubius to play bishop e3, because he just naturally develops a piece, potentially opens up a line of attack here, or d5 first, and then bishop e3 or queen to d4, because the knight won't be covering that. You know, if it goes here, you have queen d4 and maybe queen a7. So just finding a way to create an attack on that opposite side. Because you know what happens when the bishop comes back? It suddenly becomes an avalanche. We get g5 by xQc, bishop g3, h5. This man is playing this like a GM. Immediately punishing bishop to g5, bang, 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 and the avalanche is falling. But here, Rubius finds the only move for white that doesn't lose the game on the spot. I'm not even kidding. If he were to become obsessed with his bishop getting stuck and played a move like h4, black plays g4, black continues to chug away. Black can then activate the rook, the bishop, the other rook, try to push f5, f4 in the future, and white is in serious trouble from a practical standpoint. Rubius, equal or exceeding danger, strikes with the move d5 attacking the knight. When the knight moves out of the way, this man plays rook e1, setting up a line of attack here. Now here the best move for xQc was not g4, but was h4. Because it would have forced white to take the knight, and then black will respond with d takes, and now the avalanche just keeps on falling. In fact, black is straight up threatening g4, like for example g4, the knight moves, and g3. Why g3? Because it's opposite side castling, black is pawn storming, and that's it. I mean, once you just open up the position like this, the rook is coming in. Who's gonna team up with the rook? It's the queen, but it's not like this. It's not like this. Always look for checks first. Queen to c5. And the game is just over. Queen c5 check, the only legal move is king f1, and it's mate. How quickly the white position can fall apart when the avalanche of pawns comes down. You play g3, and very important you play g3 because it hits 2 pawns. White has no choice. White has to open the position. If you play h3, it's a terrible move because I can just play g3 and I block everything. That is the last thing that you want when you're being attacked, when you're attacking. When you're being attacked, you want to blockade. So, this takes me all the way back to xQc's move g4. Now, rather than taking, which a lot of people would do here, we get knight d4, utilizing that square that he moved a pawn from a move ago, a couple moves ago. Look at that, transferring the knight. And xQc here makes a terrible, terrible blunder. He just forgets about his bishop. And the craziest part was, he saw it. He calculated push, take, and then he's like, oh, my queen's hanging, that's not good. And then he went here, and sometimes that happens. We remember an idea in one set of a variation, but not in the other. And so instead of h4, he played c5, but he lost his bishop. Queen to h7. The only thing that he could do, fantastic move, locking in this, and rather than moving his knight out of the way, Rubius glues it into f5. Take, take. And now xQc has lost his most powerful piece. And he plays the move a6. Plays the move a6 because he didn't want queen b5. And look at that. Finally, Rubius finds his attacking spot. xQc plays b5 to not allow the entrance point of the rook or the queen. Again, Rubius sharp. c4, pawn break to open up the lines. b4 to hold it shut. a3 to open it up. a5 to hold it shut. c3 to open it up. I mean, these guys are just playing logical chess. Yes, there was a blunder by xQc, but that's life. These guys are 1,900, but they're playing top-notch chess. Now we get takes, and then the knight is lost, but it doesn't even matter because of how strong the infiltration is. How rare is it that two rooks stand on the only two open files and see the other side of the board? They see 7 squares. It's so rare. Just look at the other rook. It sees 1. It bought an apartment and they built a massive complex and now they have no view, which involves legal resolution of some sort. Queen b2 by Rubius, threatening mate. xQc played the only move that he thought stopped mate, at least on b7. He was right. There was mate no matter what. And at this point on his stream, Rubius drew this arrow, and he realized that he would be taken. He spent some minutes deliberating the position and ended up going, I don't have an infiltration, I'm gonna take this pawn. But he did. Mentally, he had prepared queen b7. And when queen d7 came, he realized he couldn't play it, so he completely abandoned the idea of infiltrating here. Even if he goes queen b6 and just says, later I'll find something, that would have been good too. But he just didn't realize that he could go to the other side of the board, and he just took this pawn. And immediately xQc plays bishop g7, and Rubius blundered. He took on d6, miscounting attackers and defenders, as he had figured that something had been messed up. Better for him would have been to bring his queen maybe back around this way, but the computer also shows an absolutely savage move. What's more valuable than the queen? The king, but not giving a check and losing a rook. Bishop takes d6. Because if you take the queen, rook b8 is mate. And if you take this, well, then I take your bishop because you used to guard it, and I'm threatening this again. You say, Levy, so what? I just stopped you there once. Yeah, but I've got a rook. I also can maybe bring my queen back again, or bring my queen around this way. The black king is simply too open, which is the nature of opposite side castling. But Rubius blunders, and then we get rook e3, bishop d4, rook b3. You would think that now that xQc is up a bishop, this is going to be an easy conversion process. But Rubius has a deadly threat here. You would think with black, I just play rook f8 and I'm good. I'm attacking this. This is why you need to look at danger for yourself. If rook b8, king goes anywhere, the second rook comes in, and it's mate. You're mated. You're mate. Like, the game is over. You thought you survived, and you didn't. And if black plays rook f6, then rook b8, king c7, rook b7, and you lose. Because you lose the other rook. You don't get mated, but it's kind of bad also. So xQc played the top computer move. Rook d8. And the way he explained this on stream is that if rook b8 happens, he can go behind his own rook. And that's genius. He realized that rather than allowing himself to get mated, putting the rook there gets in the way of the other rook. I mean, what more do you want from a guy? What more do you want from a guy? The guy literally saw that. I mean, come on. Those of you watching who are 1052, would you find rook d8? I mean, you gotta be honest with yourself. There is a lot of props given in this game. And the craziest thing about this game, we'll talk a little bit about later, was played in front of 150,000 people. I'll talk about that in the outro, but anyway, rook d8, h3, and takes, and we ended up getting a rook trade. Now, this, of course, for Rubius is basically the end. You cannot trade rooks here. You need to keep your rooks on because now xQc dominating on this outpost square, an outpost square being a square in the enemy territory where your bishop or knight can just stand or post out and be really strong and untouchable. And then xQc brought his rook, coordinated it with his bishop, gave a check on f2, king to g3, brought his rook back to defend this, and the d-pawn was, look at that, just scooped up. And he converted this easily after he won the rook. Rubius blundered. Even if Rubius had kept his pieces, you know, for example, actually, one thing I want to show, like here, don't get tunnel vision on this pawn. You play king h4, you walk into mate. You straight up mate yourself with this kind of weird arrangement of pieces. Always be on the lookout for if you can be put under attack, check or a capture. And in the game, ultimately, we got a very easy conversion. Felix got that pawn. Look at that. Just went directly to the A pawn, picked it up, promoted, and watch this conversion. Queen g1, rook f3. Easy. Lights out. And he wins the mini-match 2-0. The other two games of the day, the other two matches of the day were between Tubbo and Logic, rapper, Bobby Hall on chess.com. That was 1.5 for Logic. That was a very, very tense match. And honestly, I wanted to focus on these two games and not make too long of a video. As you guys can see, I'm trying to keep these between 20 and 25 minutes. Because that was an epic match. And chess.com makes little kind of like shortened versions of the longer stream, if you will, for you to check out on their YouTube channel. I just want to... Oh, and of course, the last match of the day being between Michel Carré and Rainn Wilson. That one went down to the Armageddon, but Rainn Wilson was victorious. Very, just honestly, I'm beyond words. I don't know what to say. I'm beyond words. I'm also lost for words. This has been an epic PogChamps thus far. And before we sign off here for today, I just want to give kind of a message. I want to tell everybody who's been positive. I just put out that video about Pokimane and some of those first day matchups. Now I'm putting out this video as well. If you are in the camp of people who is put off by a creator's games that I feature that you might not like or something along those lines, free speech is absolutely a thing. But you are on the wrong side of history. I cannot tell you how many gross comments were in that last video that I put up. And I'm sure that as this process continues, there will be rather hostile comments about some of the other creators. And all I have to say to you, once again, you're in the wrong on this one. There is an overwhelming push for chess. Today, chess was the #1 game on Twitch. 360,000 live viewers. This is a wave like we've never experienced. I am going to continue to feature games of creators from all walks of life. And threatening me to unsubscribe from my channel, which happened in a lot of comments, is hardly a threat. And if you're one of those people, then by all means, go. We won't miss you. And to all of you who are being positive, much love. I love making these videos. I love making, whether they're tutorials, recaps, anything. And I'm going to continue to do so. So, yeah.